Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So happy to have you back this week. I have such an amazing woman with us this week, Marci Warhaft, and I hope I didn't butcher that.
No, you got it right.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, well, thank you for being here. So this week, if you think we talked really openly about certain subject, we have the most, the guest that is, I think, is the most transparent that can be. She wrote an amazing book that I got to read, and it's very personal, intimate. And we were just talking in pre-interview how much courage it takes to, share yourself this much, and we're going to dig a bit into that. But Marci, tell me a little bit, what brought you to write the book that you wrote?
It's a good question. You know what? I am somebody who, when I was younger, I was full of confidence. I was this really happy, spirited kid, and stuff happened in my life that changed that. And I was completely unprepared for it, and it took me down paths that I wasn't expecting, could never have expected, and I did things that I wasn't proud of. And despite the fact that I was able to sort of get myself out of it and get back on track, I was living with a lot of shame. I was living with a lot of guilt, and I was living with a tremendous amount of fear. And we're talking decades after I had done things that I wasn't proud of. I was still living with so much fear over the shame, and afraid of people finding out, afraid that people were not getting to know the real me, that, everyone who thought that they liked me, well, it's because they don't know me. Everyone thought that I had done good things. Well, that's because they don't know the other things. And it's very limiting. And it was like an anchor I was carrying. And also I would meet people and be like to myself, okay, when do I tell them about myself? And do I tell them about myself? And how much do I tell them about myself? It's exhausting. It's exhausting. The easiest thing to be in life should be yourself. And I was struggling. And I got to a point where I was turning 50 soon. It was coming up. And I thought, I'm done hiding. I'm done living in fear. And the only way that I could keep myself from letting anyone shame me was to not be ashamed. And for me, that meant getting rid of my secrets. It meant that I had to get to a point where I was ready to say, okay, you know what? This is me, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I had to get to the point where I was okay with the things in my past. Not that I do it again, not that I don't look back with regret, because I do, but to understand why I did some of the things I did, forgive that, and then be able to own my whole story. And I had spent so many years judging myself negatively for how I survived certain things, instead of focusing on the fact that I survived and being proud of that. And I didn't want to get to the end of my life and feel like I had only scratched the surface of who I was. Felt like that I was still trying to be who people wanted and expected me to be instead of who I actually was, because I'd spent most of my life feeling like I wasn't good enough. And I was done with that. I was done of trying to live up to other people's expectations. I wanted to feel like I was enough. And so I decided that's it. I needed to get my story out. I had friends that I'd known for a long time who knew part of my story. No one really knew all of it. And they said, if you write your book, you could really help people see what you've overcome. And I didn't see that at that point. Because for me, I was still, this isn't a book of, this woman who goes through something and she comes out this hero. To me, what I saw was, like, I didn't hide the bad stuff I did. I didn't, if I was going to write it, I was going to write it. I wasn't going to pretty up things. I wasn't going to say the things that happened to me without acknowledging my role in it. And so I thought, there are going to be people who don't like me very much. but I had to be ready. But I just wanted to be honest. There was been so much lying in my life, not from me. Like I'd been betrayed a lot, and I hated that, and I needed to be honest. And I was just ready. So I just did it, and it
And
was great.
congratulations. And it's a beautiful result. It's called The Good Stripper. And I recommend to everyone to go get it. I assume it's on Amazon.
Yes, it's also Amazon. It's in chapters, and it's also I recorded an audio version on Audible.
Nice, nice. I love audio versions now. I listen to you, and I don't want to make it about me, but I relate to so many things you just said there. The things, and I think a lot of people will relate to that as well. When you meet someone or when you get a compliment, and in your head is like, well, that's because they don't really know me.
Right.
You always have, and some call it the imposter syndrome, some call it differently. We all have it at different degrees and levels. But I know that for me, before getting, sober, I wasn't telling people, even though that all the compliments they were giving me were granted, I didn't take any of them because I was just like, but they don't know. And like he said, it's tiring. And I think that while you're going through it, you don't even realize it because it's just an automatic defense to always say in your head, well, they don't know. And then you just pass, you just move on and you don't acknowledge the compliment really. And it's sad because, these are the things that uplift us in life and we just keep moving them aside. When did you stop doing that? Like, was it one morning you got up and it was a click of like, I'm done, or it was gradually, or like what brought you on the road of I am enough?
I think, well, I'm still evolving and I'm still learning that. It really was, I've been through a lot of changes. I'm constantly changing. My kids joke that I don't plan 5 minutes ahead, never mind, 5 years ahead, because that's my life. My life has always been, oh, we're here now. Okay, now we're here. Okay, now we're here. Okay, and so I can't even plan. And it seems like if you told me a year ago I'd be here, I would have been like, no way. And a year before that, it would have been like, no way. So I never quite felt settled in my life for a long time. I never felt like I fit. I was always trying to fit myself to be somebody that I wasn't, to be in a situation that I wasn't, to live in a traditional way that didn't fit me. And I always felt that I didn't feel right. And it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't that there was something wrong with me. I was just trying to fit myself into a situation that wasn't right. It's the way I describe it is I felt like a broken puzzle piece and I was trying to fit myself into this puzzle, but I was broken. I realized I wasn't broken. I was just in the wrong puzzle, and so again, when I was turning 50, I wasn't at a job I liked. I wasn't really being able to live fully as me because I still was afraid that people would remember or somebody would bring up. And I don't know if there was something I found very empowering about turning 50. As women, we're not supposed to, which is a shame because I found it very empowering. I mean, I lost my mom very young. She was in her 50s. And I just felt like there are way more years behind me than ahead of me. And I didn't want to waste another second not being fully me. And it was just it. That was it. And I think, you're talking about how we can't accept sometimes compliments and because we feel like, oh, if they knew the truth. But here's what was so interesting to me. When I released the book, writing it is one thing, finding out it's going to be published is something else. And I really expected that there were going to be a lot of people who would hear my stories and turn away from me or just shun me. But what's so amazing is that I spent so many years being afraid of what people would think of me if they heard the truth. I ended up telling the truth, and I had more people connect with me and say, oh, I've been there. And it's like you said, look, there are a lot of parts of my story that are quite unique and people won't relate to, but the themes are there. People have lost major people in their life. People have dealt with self-esteem issues. People have dealt with body image issues. People have dealt with difficult relationship issues. I mean, there's so many things in there that people can connect with. And that's what's been so magical about it is that all those things that I thought would disconnect me from people are actually the things that connected me to people. which is why I think it's so important that we don't hide who we are, because we don't know how many people are benefiting from hearing the gritty stories. It's not always the sunshine and rainbows that connect us. And there are people who contact me and they say, okay, they can't share certain things yet, but at least hearing from somebody who has shared it and the world didn't collapse makes them feel hopeful. Knowing that they're not alone, that's so powerful, because so many times when you're in the middle, and you know from your experiences, when you're in the middle of a self-destructive situation, you feel like you're the only one. You feel like a terrible person because you're going through this. You don't realize how many other people are going through the same thing. So when you're able to say, this is what I'm doing, or this is what I did, to have other people say, me too. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's everything. Feeling isolated is what keeps us down. Knowing there are others out there like us, that's what will keep us going forward.
And I feel also like automatically almost people want to confide in you because they know you won't be judging. And
exactly.
Ultimately, I think that's what we're always scared of, judgment. Whatever level it's at, we're scared of judgment. We're scared of losing love or attention. So we're always careful about what we're saying. And, it's easy to say, well, just do you and don't care about the others. But we have kids, we meet other parents, there's sports, you compare your kids you compare the family situation, you compare, oh, she's doing better recipes than me and blah, blah. Right. You end up comparing yourself, on every single level at some point. So you're always scared of judgment, because the judgment in one area in our head affects all of areas. And I do think like there's absolutely no one perfect and no one that did not do something they shouldn't have done. It's just that some recognize it and embody it and be like, yeah, I did that and it's okay. I'm still a good person. And there's one key point that you said in your story, and there's a few things I want to come back on, but one is like you forgave yourself.
That was everything. That's everything. I say all the time that there's that cliche or that quote about how you need to forgive the people who hurt you, not for them, but for you. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't agree with it. I think if you're holding on to a resentment that's keeping you from being happy, then yes, you need to work through it. However, I don't believe that it's empowering to forgive people who hurt you, especially if they knew what they were doing, or if given the opportunity, they would do it again. I don't think they deserve forgiveness. And I think it's actually more empowering to say, I don't forgive them because I know I deserve better. Because I know that I deserve more respect than that. And that's what I think is important. So I don't feel at all the importance of being the bigger person and being, no. Being the bigger person doesn't mean, if in order to respect you, I need to disrespect me. Like, I'm just, no. So, but
amen on that. Honestly, amen on 100%. That. I've heard it so often, like, forgive yourself. And I was abused when I was 5. And, no matter how much of a good person I'm trying to be, and no matter how much of all of the good things that I'm trying to follow, that is one person I cannot forgive in my heart. And then sometimes I get down on myself thinking like, well, just do the process better and blah, blah. And, but what you say is making so much sense. He knew what he was doing. He was an adult. I was a 5-year-old. What needs to be forgiven in that, and I'm using my example, but it can go with any abuse example or situation. What you need to forgive is you for letting it happen because we think we've let it happen,
Right. Right. Exactly.
Did. So it's not the other person, and I love you that. It's not the other person you need to forgive. It's yourself at that moment.
I'm sorry, but they betrayed us, they hurt us, and now we're supposed to take on the work of forgiving. That will never fly for me. What I found I had to do was I was holding on to shame and guilt for things that I did. And so for me, and I said to you earlier, it's not about me saying, okay, I did some bad things. I forgive myself. Like there are things that I did, anything I did that hurt somebody else, which was always unintentional. But I do realize that some of my actions hurt other people. I will never be okay with that. Like I want to make that clear. I will always regret that, but that's okay that I regret that because I will always feel bad that I hurt somebody else, even if it was unintentional. However, what I had to do in order to move forward was to stop hating myself for what I did, because what I'm doing in that sense, and what a lot of us do, is that we judge what we did then by who we are now. Wow. And that isn't helpful, because would I do those things now? Of course not. But why? Because I know better, because I've experienced more, because I have insight, because I have support. But back then I didn't have any of those things. So that's what I do when I work with my clients with my resiliency coaching, is we look at those things that are holding us back. But it's to not shame ourselves. It's to say, okay, what was going on at that time when I did that thing, or when I felt that, or when I said that? Okay, that was going on. What kind of support did I have? Well, what would I do differently now? And then you feel like, okay, I've learned from that experience, and I can forgive that person because they were doing the best they could. I know that I would never intentionally hurt anyone. I was doing the best I could just to survive, which is why with my book, it's dedicated to anyone who's struggling to forgive themselves with the mistakes they made when they were just trying to survive. That's all we can do. But as soon as I was able to look at those things and go, oh, okay, now I understand why I did that. Now I understand why I felt that way. I was able to let so much of that go, which is why I was able to put it out there, because I get it now. I hated myself for so many years, and that's not helpful. That doesn't help me be a good friend, a good parent. It's a waste of a life. And how dare I waste this life that I was given? So it was the most liberating thing. And again, I'm not excusing myself for things that I did, but I'm understanding it.
No,
and that's the difference.
And I get it 100%. And you are very clear in what you're saying. And I hope that everyone is getting it on the level that you're saying it as well, because it's profound, actually. And I love what you said. Don't judge the person you were with the person you are now. You know, the person you are now will judge the person you were, because that's exactly what we do. But then we were 20,
right?
We were 30, we were 40. We did not have the same maturity. We did, like, there's so many things that were different. Because, like, I think that if anyone is honest with themselves, there's all something we did that we're like, that wasn't the smartest decision. You know, and if you don't, well, wait till you have a kid of yours that is adult and watch them do mistakes and be like, you shouldn't do that, and blah, blah, and then stop and ask yourself if you did it in the past. Like, and I'm honest with kids, so sometimes I say something and they're like, oh, because you didn't do it. And I'm like, I always wanted to and I'm like, well, be smarter than me. You don't have to do the stupid things I did. Be smarter. Like,
right.
But I love that. Like, don't judge yourself just say it again. Don't judge the things you did then by who you are now. Thank you. That's so much better said. Yeah. So, and you know, I like that you turn your story also to help people get through their story. And I think that that's one of the big things that I like about people sharing their deep story, because some will say, like, why are you sharing something so personal? Like, you need attention or whatever.
I just got that question on a social media site. I posted something and I just had that exact.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but that was the thing. They were like, well, why would you tell your personal story? That's personal? And I'm like, for you, I'm not telling you to share your stuff, but the more we share about ourselves, I feel that when I share these things, I am hopefully creating a safe space for someone else to do the same. And I think that's very important, because again, I know it is from the messages that I get from people as soon as the book came out, from the messages I got. And again, not everybody could share. Not everyone has. Listen, there's some situations where you just can't, where it might not feel safe to share everything. And so I'm not saying that you need to do that, but I think those of us who can, and I get that a lot. Like, how did you're so brave. Am I brave? I'm a little crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's part of the trauma that lets me do this. But I think that if I'm strong enough now to do that, And I was prepared to take the hits if that's what came. I really had to get to that point. I couldn't have written it any time sooner. I really had to be to a point where if the hits came, I had to be strong enough to withstand it. But if I can do it, then I'm going to do it, because somebody else might not be ready now, but they might be ready later on. And if I can help them with that process to be able to relieve themselves of the anxiety and the fear that they're carrying, then that is huge for me. That makes me happy.
Yes, and whether you know, the idea is not to have everyone share their stories. The idea is to have everyone recognize their story and know that they're not alone, and
exactly,
they're not unique. Because when we're in those stories, and you have so many different ones in your book, I know that a lot of people will relate with different parts. But when you're in one of them, you're like, that's it. The world is against me. This is happening to me. And, you think you're alone. And that's why, people like you are important, because I also think it gives hope. And, I remember being in dark days in my life where I just wanted to die. It was over. I could not see tomorrow. I was done. And now, like, 20 something years later, I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God, the wind changed ways, and I changed my perspective, because I have 3 amazing kids. And I'm not saying that life is easy every single day and it's Walt Disney every single day. I'm just saying, if I compare how I felt back then, like if I would go right back to that moment compared to now, 2 different people, 2 different mindsets. But the one before did not see any exit. So
I was there too. Yep.
So when you hear stories and when you're in that, you're like, there is hope. I can't see it now.
But that's it. I think it's also important for us to share if we can, because there were times just like you when I felt I started to believe that you're born with a certain amount of strength, emotional strength. And I felt like I had gone through mine and I didn't have any more. And I thought, how am I going to go through something? Like, there was just no way. I was exhausted. And at those times I didn't have support around me. The people in my life who I'd loved the most, who, my mother and my brother, who made me feel the most loved and protected when I lost them years ago. I mean, that changed everything for me. And so not having my own self-worth and then not feeling loved and protected, it just let me really fall deep into a hole. And I have 2 children. And at first I thought, okay, I could never leave them. I wouldn't do that. But me not having parents, I know what that's like. But then I got to a point, as horrible as this is, where I started to think, well, maybe they'd be better without me. Maybe I'm a burden. Maybe I'm not good enough anyway. And that's a terrible place to be. And I think it's so important that when somebody is so in the dark, like when you really, like you said, you feel like, I cannot go another day. Like I can't, like I want the couch to I want to sink in and never come out. But then you find I was sure that every spark that I ever had of my spirit was gone, and it wasn't. And I think it's so important that anyone who is in a very, very dark place, to know that we've been there. We really have. I mean, and people will go, no, not like this. We've been there. But even, I don't care. Like, I've had people say to me, oh, you've been through so much and you just get up and keep going. No, that's not how it was. No, I fell so many times. And there are times when I got up pretty quickly. There were times when I crawled, like digging my nails into the dirt, scrapes on my knees, trying to move forward. So it's not an easy path, but it is possible. And I think that is what it all comes down to, is somebody hearing, it feels impossible, but it's not impossible. And there's no shame in that's the thing. There's no shame in how you recover. There's no shame in how you move forward. There's no shame. You hear stories all the time that drive me crazy about, this person's going through this, but they go to work every day and they're whatever. And this person's doing this, but who cares? I'm guaranteed there's other issues. It doesn't matter if your road to getting back to you is messy or dirty or imperfect. Who cares? As long as you get there. And nobody should judge your journey to getting better.
No, and quite often we can't forget the mask. I call it the mask because I wore it for many years.
Mm-hmm.
On the outside, everyone thought my life was so perfect and cute. And on the inside, everything was crumbling. So to see someone keep going to work and all of this, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It just means like they're at a different place and they find the strength for that, but it doesn't mean their life is better. It doesn't mean they're happier or whatever. So yeah, there's, we're told that when we're young, and I never really understood how profound it is, but don't judge until you walk in someone's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100%, like 1,000%. We should teach that to kids, like repeat it every single day.
Well, for sure. What I used to tell my kids is that people are like puzzles. You see the image, but you have no idea what it took for every little piece to come into play. And I also used to tell them, remember that when it comes to anybody, you only know what you know. You only know what you know. You don't know the other part of it that you don't know. And you know how many people, when you talk about the mask, do you know how many people after they read my book, we're talking people who knew me recently, people who knew me when I was little, who'd say to me, "Oh my God, we had no idea. I had no idea." And it's like, of course you didn't. How can you even imagine anyway? But for sure. So, and it wasn't that I was this fantastic actress who was trying to, but we can slip into that very, very easily into those masks, because that is the way that our society is designed. We're supposed to wake up every day and be grateful that we took our first breath. I mean, that's what the thing is, right? You woke up, that's the cliche. You woke up today, be grateful. Well, some people aren't going to be grateful because they're having a really hard time. And that's okay. Some days are great. And some days, if you just get through it, that's a great day. That's enough. But we're and you know what it is though? It's not even for us. I think it's such a cop-out because a lot of people are uncomfortable when somebody isn't okay. Right? So if I'm going through hell, somebody, and they go, "How are you?" And I go, "I'm going through hell." Well, what are they going to do? So they're going to be like, "Well, what am I supposed to do with that?" Well, they don't know what to do, and it's fine, So they just really want to hear, "I'm good." "Oh, great, I'm good too," and that's fine. But you can't go through life like that your entire existence 24/7. So I'm not saying that you need to tell everybody when you're having a hard, but it's okay to be real. Like it's so, at least for you. There are days when I get up and I'm posting videos, so I'm dancing outside, I'm dancing down the street, and that's how I feel. But then there are days when I wake up and I go, okay, this is going to be a tough one. Whatever I had planned is I'm going to be a little less productive today. And it's going to be quieter because it's a harder, life is heavy, and there are times when you have to feel it. And that's okay too. And I think that oftentimes we feel bad that we're not being productive all the time, or we feel bad if we feel bad. And that's such a waste of energy. I know somebody was telling me that they're going to take the day off and they're going to, they're very stressed, but they're going to take the day off. And then they were stressing about taking the day off. And I'm like, what a waste. You're not resting because you're stressing over trying to rest, but then you're not resting. So that's how we are. We judge productivity the wrong way, and it's the same thing with when I talked about how I went through stuff and then people just assumed, oh, she went through a hard time and then she got up and kept moving. And it's like, it's very normal in life to fall sometimes. And I think what happens is we look at it and go, oh God, I was doing so well, whatever it is. And then I fell. Rest. Instead of looking at that as a failure, it is hard to move forward in life, especially these days, especially with whatever's going on in your life. It can be very hard. So it's kind of like when people say, I hit a wall. Instead of thinking of it as you hit a wall, maybe you just needed to lean on it for a little bit. So think of it as a rest. Same thing when you're moving forward. And if you fall, it's not a failure. It's, oh, you know what? Life is telling me I need to chill. I need to relax. I need to regroup. And then you move forward again. And then you're going to fall again because life is hard. And then you give yourself the time to get your strength back. And then you move forward. It's all part of the progress. We're so end of the line, finish line, get to the end, be as big and as we're so focused on the wrong thing. I mean, I don't want that whole journey destination thing, but we don't give ourselves credit for just existing in this crazy world. And I think we need I think we do just to make it through. I think we deserve a lot of credit.
Yes. And you know what? I remember seeing on stage one of my biggest mentor. He's my best friend. He doesn't know it because we don't talk, but he doesn't quite follow. But I remember seeing him on stage saying, yeah, and I had a funk day. And I was like, what? That was for me the biggest slap in the face, because for me, he has the perfect life and there's literally nothing that he could add to his life to make it better.
Right.
You know, perfect health, perfect finances, perfect everything. But when he said that, and I think I wasn't the only one shocked, like people went, And he's like, guys, everyone has those days. You need to have those days
right.
to know what a good day is. And, you know, I've changed my philosophy a lot on these days as well, because I still have them. And that's just a part of me, and it's never going to go away. Well, maybe it's going to go away one day. I don't know. But I do have those days that I'm antisocial. I'm not in the mood. I get tired reading 2 texts and I'm like, done. I just want a nap. I just want to talk to no one. I used to battle those days so hard. And it was causing stress, anxiety. I was disappointed in myself, like everything that you said. Now I'm just like, oh, it's one of those days. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm just going to close everything. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And I'm actually like, oh, it's one of those days. So it's my day off. It wasn't planned, but that's what's happening.
Exactly. That's exactly what I said.
You know, I know that not everyone can do that. So like if you have a job and you need to go 9 to 5, okay, well, then just focus on what you really need to do.
Right. Not the others. Yeah.
Just show up. Don't even try to be smart or whatever. Just show up, do what you need to do, and then come back home and rest. But accept that it's okay not to be 100% every single day. And that's what I really like about you and your book, is that it's written so raw and real that, you know, we feel like we're sitting in the living room with you and you're just talking to us and you're like, oh, that happened. And, you know, but one of the big things too is that you also fought addictions. And, you know, I'm pretty knowledgeable on that subject as well. And I know that too is not an easy task. It's one more obstacle. But it's all in the resiliency. Did I say that right? Whatever, your resilience that you have. How do you do that on a daily basis? Because, you know, it's not like now you published your book and you're on podcasts and it's all going well. So you've arrived and you won. Your journey is still going, and you still always have to be aware of, you know, I need to work on myself. I need to work on my mindset. I need to work on whatever you're working on. But what's your
well, it's funny. I'm listening to you say that. And when you're saying that, that's exactly what it is. It's saying, I need to work on it. So for me, I had it wasn't a sex addiction, but it was, I abused myself with sex. I abused myself with food, which is a biggie. But the thing is, what I know now, so it's because what I've learned is, let's say it's a day when I find that I'm focusing more on my body. I'm not feeling as comfortable in my body. I know now that it has nothing to do with my body. That's when I go, wait, what's going on? What's happening in the world? Like, something else is stressing me out, but my go-to is to go to my body, because for so many years, that was my thing. You know, when the world seemed too scary, when the world was too stressful, when the world was out of control, the one thing I felt I could control was my body. That was the only thing. It's from 17 years old on that I felt I could control. It's not true. You become eating disorders, you have no control, but that's what I felt. So some days for me, it's self-talk. It's knowing, wait a second, you know, this isn't reality. The way I'm feeling now, because that's what I do. That's a Marci thing. You know, if I'm feeling, whether it's, oh, I'm not feeling good enough, or I'm not feeling, you know, in my body properly, or whatever it is, I know quickly that that's not what the issue is. Whereas in the past, I would let that take over. I must not be good enough. I must not look good enough. I'm going to cancel my plans because, well, I don't deserve to even be there. It's not going to go well. Now I know, stop it. This is your thing. And that's the difference. It's also the forgiving yourself. I mean, it just happened to me a little while ago where I wasn't being as productive. This one day I had a really tough day and I thought, but it's a tough time. Of course it's a tough day. Of course it is. And it's just taking that pressure off that helps me get through. Again, just like you said, it doesn't mean that I'm going to go, okay, so today's tough. Whatever. I'm just going to go out and take on the day. Some days you just can't do that. So it's okay. And I know, like, I had to really get to the point where I believed that I deserved to have days that weren't great. And it's knowing the difference between a fact and a feeling. I could feel like I'm not worthy, but I know that's not a fact. I know that's just the way I feel, and that will pass. And that changes for me everything. I mean, I'm very grateful to have found recovery from my eating disorder. But yes, it's not that it's the behaviors. I have to be careful. So the thoughts can come in. It's what I do with those thoughts, and that's the difference. But it really has to come from a place of kindness for yourself. It's when you were talking earlier, it made me think of this great quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's on those days that we're feeling the weakest that we're actually fighting the hardest. And that's why we have to be kinder and have compassion to ourselves. Because on those days when we feel like we're not doing enough because the world feels so heavy, those are the days when we're fighting so hard to keep going. So we have to be extra compassionate with ourselves instead of judging ourselves for what we're not doing. It's just be extra compassionate, understanding the way we would be with a friend or a family member. We have to show ourselves the same amount of compassion. I think that's huge. We offer so much of ourselves for other people. We're so kind to other people most of the time and forgiving, but it's like, yeah, but when it comes to me, yeah, but and it's funny because I just think of this when you were talking earlier too, with the whole compliment thing. Women are the worst at this. And it's that whole thing of, hey, you look great. Tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep. I love your shirt. Oh my God, I got it for I've had it forever and I got it for $5. Your hair's great. Oh, I haven't had a haircut. It's just, and it's that whole thing of just saying, thank you. Thank you. But it's this weird thing. And it almost feels wrong to feel okay with ourselves. And we have to change that. We have to, and again, I know it's an issue for men too. Believe me, I work with men too. But I think with women, we are just told from birth that we are supposed to be the caregivers and we're supposed to be the ones to build everybody up emotionally. And we let ourselves down that way sometimes, because even with that, when we focus so much of our energy on making other people feel better, we feel like we're not doing enough. And I think that needs to change.
Yes. And there's two things that I want to come back on, because while I was listening to you, someone may be thinking that, and I just felt it, but you're like, oh, if this happened and blah, blah. Some people may see that, well, you're giving yourself excuses. And there's a huge difference between what Marci was saying and giving herself excuses. That what she's giving is self-compassion, understanding yourself when you know where your limits are, when you stop pushing beyond where you shouldn't go. Excuses are like, well, I don't know, I have a bit of a cold, so I'm not going to do this. I have a bit of a this. It's when fear gives you a reason not to do something. So that's two different, complete. I don't know if you see what I'm saying here.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I think also it comes down to let's even take something like that, where if someone's thinking, well, no, I'm just lazy today and I don't feel like I'm giving myself okay, but you know what? Maybe you're lazy for a reason. Maybe you don't realize at this level, you're not realizing that you're tired, not because it's not that you went to the gym, it's not that you were working to, but just maybe something emotionally is happening and you don't realize, because I feel like we in this society, we have to earn our fatigue. Like, I'm tired because I was working crazy. I'm tired because my child was up sick all night. And sometimes we're just tired and we don't really know why. So even if you're having a day where it's like, oh, I'm just feeling lazy, it's not lazy. Again, it's you're just giving your body some time and your mind some time to rest. Now, if you have to get something done and this is going every day where you're like, then, but even then there might be something bigger at play, and maybe you need to make some, maybe there's a reason. Maybe I don't want to do this project I'm supposed to do at work because I don't want to do it because I don't want to be doing this kind of work. And maybe, maybe I'm supposed to see this friend for lunch and I keep putting it off, and but maybe there's a reason why. But to go to the negative and beat ourselves up, that's our go-to. And I think that's a big mistake. I think we need to think about why that's happening. So really, again, it goes back to being kind to ourselves. And if you have an issue with the idea of being kind, that's something that needs to be looked at.
So thanks for clarifying that, because you said it very well. There's always an underlying something under something. So yes, get to know yourself and do it kindly. Marci, there's so many the questions that I would want to ask, and but there's one that I will ask, because we talked about it in pre-interview, and it's going to tie in with something else. You're going to see people, but when I met Marci, I'm like, because I read her book first, and then we met face to face, well, on Zoom, and I was just like, "Hi, Marci. Like, I have the impression I already know you," and she was like, "Oh, I get this." And I'm like, how does that feel? Really exposing yourself this much. And I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting experience that I could not have been prepared for until I had done it. I mean, you think that you're an open person. You think, you're going to write your story, and then you realize people are reading it. And it's a very big difference. And I was saying to you, when somebody says to me, whether it's somebody I knew a long time ago or a complete stranger, I get that a lot on social media, they'll say, "Oh, I ordered your book." And I'm like, "Great." And then I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness, they're going to read it." And they're going to know a lot, because I don't hold back. And I will say it's a very simultaneously empowering and vulnerable feeling. So one thing I talk about and I use in my coaching is there's something very powerful about ruining your own reputation. So I feel I was so afraid of how I was going to be perceived that I kept secrets for so long and held on to that fear. Once I said, forget it, like if you're disappointed in what I'm going to say, here you go. And I kind of ruined my own reputation. But it was the best thing ever, because all I did was liberate myself of the shame and guilt. And like I said, it brought people actually closer to me. But there is a vulnerability. That's why I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and share their story. I would tell everybody to write it. I'd say just pen and paper, just write stuff, write about your life. Because I do think that when you put pen to paper, you see things differently. Doesn't mean you have to share it with anyone. But for me, there is this, I honestly feel, and it's given me the courage to find out so many more things about myself, because once I stopped trying to be who I thought I was supposed to be, it gave me that space to figure out who I really was and to keep finding out who I really am, because I'm going to keep changing. But it's it's interesting too, because I will tell you, even writing the book, I knew that when I was writing it, there are certain stories that I've told before, certain things to certain people, but I had almost built scar tissue around it. So I could tell it like I was talking about somebody else almost. But when I was writing my book, I didn't want that. I wanted you to feel what I was feeling. When I talked about the people in my life that I loved and lost, I wanted you to know how much I loved them. I wanted you, when I talked about being really sick in the hospital, I wanted you to understand that fear. I wanted you to be there with me. But the only way I could do that is if I went back there. So I had to open up the scar tissue that had healed. And that was tough. And even I realized it took me, a lot of podcast interviews and radio interviews to realize that every time I even share, it brings me back, sometimes. So there are days when I will feel emotionally spent or drained and kind of go, oh, wait, I just spoke about this for 2 hours. That's why. That's why I'm saying sometimes we don't even realize what it is that's exhausting, But I'm happy I did it. I'm really happy I did it. And I'm sure there are some people who look at me differently, positive and negative. But it's my truth. Like, it's my truth. Whether I told anyone or not, stuff that happened. and I know that, and I live that, and it's in me no matter what. So if
And
people know about it,
it made you who you are. So if someone likes you today, there's building blocks behind the person you are today.
that's it.
You
Yeah.
can't deny those building blocks and then appreciate the person you are, because you got there for a reason. And, my last question, I'm going to ask you a question that when I'm asked that question, I find it so tricky. And I feel like I know your answer, but I'm going to test it out. So if you could change anything, what would you change?
About my life?
Mm-hmm.
See, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. That's a very tough one for me, because I feel like, the answer is supposed to be, I wouldn't change anything because but that's not true. There's a lot that I would change, actually. So I will answer it. It's something that happened in my life, and then I will change something with me. So the first thing is, on a very basic, the first thing that really threw my life off track wasn't my father leaving, wasn't being abandoned that way. It was my brother dying. And it's sometimes I think about it, actually, and I think, like, I don't know what my life completely changed when he died, when he was 21 and I was 17. It completely changed. So I have no idea. I have no idea. You watch all those movies where they're like, you can't go back in time and change something because so it's a weird thing. But do I wish I had him here? And wait, 100%. Now, what I would change about me is what I would do if I could go back in time. I would make myself learn all the things I have no interest in learning, all the things that bore me, from how to fix my car to, how to better with finances, to things that I have no interest in. I would make myself learn, because I learned the hard way that, I had to learn. I had to learn. I almost feel like in some ways, yes, I could overcome big things. I've done some pretty amazing things. However, I feel like I'm 10 years old with some normal basic things, because I just didn't have the knowledge coming out of just being in a protective home and then being in a relationship where I did nothing as far as finances or anything like that. So I'm learning now. So yeah, I would make myself learn all the things that I have no interest in.
Well,
but yeah, other than that, it's so hard because there's so much, there's so much craziness.
Exactly. And that's why I say it's a tricky question. And I usually don't ask it because, like me, when I start thinking about it, I'm like, well, I would change this. No, wait, I wouldn't have met my first husband. I wouldn't have.
Right. That's right. So that's the thing.
Just start rolling everything. But
you know what? This is what it's funny, because I do think that sometimes, like, I think, okay, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't have my kid. And then part of me goes, okay, but this isn't happening. So we're playing this game. So I make the rules. And in my game, that still would have happened. Like, somehow, and I want to say one thing, it's really important, because one thing you said, and so when you say everything that happened made you who you are, and I always fight that, because I feel it's important to say my traumas didn't make me who I am. My resilience is who I am, not my traumas. So I think that kind of lost my train of thought there.
No, but I agree with you on that. And you know what? When I say what happened made you who you are, I'm not thinking about the traumas or the pain. I'm thinking about because I do know some people that went through similar things and they reacted completely differently, and they're not at the same place either. So I think that when I say that, I really look at how you reacted, how you build your strength, and all on
right. But I think, just to go back, it's because when I think of that, I think about before life got crazy, and I was this little bundle of sunshine. I was really confident, and I stood up to anybody but anything. I was a little dancer on stage and all that stuff. And I always used to joke that I peaked when I was 10. That when I was 10, I was everything, and then I kind of. But here's the thing: I thought for so many years that I lost all of that. Like, I thought that little girl spirit was gone. Then it came back, right? Only over the last couple of years where I really feel like it came back. And that's why I say that if I were to play that game of what what would I change? I'd like to believe, same as with my spirit, where I lost it and then life, like I had it, life knocked it out of me, but that's who I was. Like, I still feel like that little girl. Like, I still feel like that's the feisty, because no matter what happened, that's who I was supposed to be. So the same thing, whatever happened, I would have those boys. What, I don't know, whatever, somehow I would have. So I like that. That's the thing. It's your game. You make the rules. So
I like that.
That's how I felt.
I'm gonna play your game. We make no rules.
Exactly.
Well, Marci, thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like we could chat for
Probably.
You're welcome to come back whenever you want. But I will ask you, first of all, your book, people can get it at Chapters, Amazon. How can people reach you?
Okay, so the book is it's The Good Stripper, a soccer mom's memoir of lies, loss, and lap dances. It is on Amazon, and it's also in most Chapters in Indigo bookstores. And the audio, or Kindle, it's also on Kindle, and the audiobook on Audibles, and I'm reading it. So it is like I'm just telling you my story. That was an interesting experience doing that. And so you can find me at thegoodstripper.com for book information, or marciwarhaft.com for the resiliency coaching. And I'm all over social media, so you can find me there too.
Yes, and I'm sure you're a bundle of joy to follow. Real.
I'm something. Yeah.
When someone tells you I'm something, follow them because they're.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's not boring.
It's good. It's good, and I think we were raised too much with don't brag about yourself, don't be pretentious, but these are exactly things that we should say about ourselves. Like, yeah, I'm really good, and yes, I'm super.
No, but I don't even mean that. I just meant that I'm like, like I'll post dance videos, and I always say that for everyone who says, "Oh, I love your videos," I know there are people saying, "Oh my God, there she goes again," but I don't care. So that's it. It's entertaining.
Okay, I will go watch these videos. Now you piqued everyone's curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you for your last word that you would leave the listeners with. And let's focus probably on self-destruction and resilient. I can't say that word. Being resilient.
Resilience. I'm just going to say, all I would say is this. You need to forgive yourself for the mistakes you made when you were just trying to survive. That's it.
So don't forget that, people. You need to forgive yourself.
You're just doing your best. That's it.
Yes. And I like to say also, like, we're doing our best with the tools that we had at the time. And
exactly.
That goes for your parents as well, if you want to criticize them.
It's true. There's a great quote with that. I have to say, there's a great quote. And it says something like, your kids don't realize that while you're watching them grow up, they're watching you grow up too. Yeah. Right? We're just people, and we're just learning as we go. We don't have all the answers. So
absolutely. Well, thank you for being so real. Thank you for being here. And people, reach out to Marci. I think, if you're looking for some change, best coach out there. So thank you, Marci. And for everyone, if you have questions or comments or suggestions, please write to me at info@simplycaroline.com, and I will answer you. And otherwise, I'll see you next week.